Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of Intermission.
This episode is the first one to be recorded by a robot, so if you notice any disparities or comments about being heavily edited in about the robot revolution, then now you know.
Yeah, turns out our glorious supreme Doom Radio overlord Alfonzo has set up a server, a robot, a studio, and even little drinks for us to enjoy. Very nice of him. I'm pretty sure this drink isn't poisoned either.
Don't touch the spirits.
I mean, it's a nice thing. I mean, you just noticed that...
Kinsie, damn it, you're supposed to die at the end, not the beginning.
I think it's fine.
Well, this time we've got the beautiful, beautiful rivalry come flesh. We've got the Z-Doomers and we've got the Doom Worlders on two sides here. We've got me, we've got Kinsie, we've got Alfonzo, and we've got MTrop. MTrop. Matt Tropicano.
Yeah, I like to think that I'm kind of Switzerland in this whole land war here. I just gravitate from place to place where people make stuff for Doom and other such things. And
let's just get the Matt Tropicana joke out of the way since we're talking about drinks, okay? Just
I didn't even think about that. I'm sorry.
Well, like all of my friends in high school and college and.
Matt, are you drinking already?
Yeah, I am. I mean,
what's the beer of the evening? What are you doing?
The beer of the evening is Avance by the Allagash Brewing Company in I believe they're in Maine. I think.
Mm.
Portland, Maine. Yeah. The other Portland.
Didn't take long to instill this feature on this podcast. I mean, it seems to be a thing with every podcasting endeavor. Wow.
You can look forward to the regular edition on our next entries. We will start talking about the beer of the night and what we are going to drink. Me? I'm boring. I'm drinking coffee.
Well,
and that killed the conversation.
I mean, this is good radio. Just this dead air right after us talking about what we're drinking.
Term, get your cricket sound file.
I start mentioning I'm drinking coffee, and then I can just hear the atmosphere drop as everyone stares at me in disgust. Well, anyway, if you're looking for something to sink your teeth into, we've actually got a whole bunch of fancy new controversies going around in the community. We've got a nice little map set here that spanned controversies across two separate forums, licking on the heels of a third. Map set made for an early version of Z-Doom known as Lilith.pk3. Lilith.pk3, made by Anotac. It is a simple mod, a very, very simple mod, but it requires a specific version of Z-Doom in order to make use of a whole bunch of rendering tricks and glitches and errors in the code in order to create what is probably can only be referred to as a secret world. If any of you are familiar with the old Metroid 2 Return of Samus, there was the ability to go outside of the map into a secret world where everything was just wrong.
Is this one of those haunted Game Boy cartridge creepypastas?
It sure looks like it. It's...
Doom Guy's eyes turned black and ultra-realistic.
Doom2.exe.
Ultra-violent blood started pouring out.
My god, who the hell writes those things? It's gotta be like an 11-year-old kid that like just doesn't know what the heck creepy or horrifying is, and it's just...
Probably not pasta either.
No, it's not. No, I mean, well, if you want to go for the easy joke, yeah. But like, yeah, I mean, there's this weird innocence in all of those like terrible, terrible creepypastas where they don't even make it seem creepy or frightening. It's just that like they try to put what's in their head into writing, and it's just terrible because it's nothing that anybody else would find frightening.
Matt, are you okay?
At all?
Are you okay?
I think we hit his button.
I mean,
it's okay, Matt.
I mean,
it's okay, Matt. There's no creepypastas here. They're not gonna hurt you.
I can't even eat it.
I'm just sorry, man. I can't have another repeat run of Sonic.exe. I just can't, man. Nightmares for days.
Matt,
Nightmares for
this is
days.
a safe space.
The aesthetic of Lilith is something that just really cannot be denied. It is... I can't describe it. It just looks... It looks glitchy as hell, but in a fascinating way. It's broken, but it's intentionally broken.
You know what it kind of looks like? Like if you took the partial invisibility power up and you added color to it, and like it has that like weird wavy like jaggedness to everything, and it just duplicates a whole bunch of pixels in bizarre ways. Like I know somebody's going to appreciate like this mod, and I'm not saying like I don't. I mean it's you know, somebody trying something new, and that's always a worthwhile thing to do.
Like, I think the first time it was advertised, it was as
like it was Anotech going like, oh, I just reinstalled Doom from these floppies, and oh, some weird shit happened, and I'm like, how did he achieve this? Because like, you know, it's just data errors, you just fuck everything up, but it's like how, like I'm kind of intrigued just how he pulled it off.
That whole thing, like trying to figure out how he pulled it off. It reminds... This is a bit of a slightly esoteric reference, I guess. But it reminds me of what Rob Sheridan, the longtime art director for Nine Inch Nails, did with like the dual booklet artwork for the soundtrack for The Social Network. He had these promotional stills in the movie that he had to use in some way, because, you know, Hollywood movie and that. And he basically did horrible things to them to glitch them out. And I remember one of the tactics he mentioned using was like opening the JPEG files up in like whatever the Mac equivalent of Notepad is, pasting in reams of erotic fanfiction, and seeing how the Mac preview app tried to interpret it.
Wow.
That's one way to make music.
I feel like that's what is it, like you always get like interesting stuff happening when you have somebody not understand what compression is, and just winging it, like just seeing what happens if they just like tinker with things. Because like I mean, a lot of good stuff comes from experimentation. A lot of good stuff comes from just you know, changing a little thing and see how that affects other things. And you get really like unique crap. Like I mean, crap isn't terrible. I mean like unique stuff. Like Lilith.
There's not really a lot like it.
There really isn't.
I'll admit I haven't really played it at the moment because, again, it requires an earlier version of Zdoom that, and I'm kind of lazy to have like 10 different versions of Zdoom on my hard drive. Which brings us to at least one of the teacup-sized storms that brewed up over this, in that...
Graph's all flipped to shit.
Yeah, basically, it's one
There's
of
no other way to point it.
I guess the way to put it is that it's just one of those storm in a teacup things where something... I've been saying that a lot today, I'm sorry. But, like, it's one of those things where something comes up and everyone sort of overreacts and people overreact to that, and just this weird domino effect about things that really, ultimately, don't really matter all that much.
The irony of the whole thing is that Anatak had been hanging out in one of these secret alternative Illuminati compound IRCs, and for a while he was working on this thing, he would show screenshots occasionally, and we would all ogle over the aesthetic we've been talking about, but he was really just keen to make sure it played well, which is obviously not what anyone's focusing on. And so he sees this whole controversy as something of a distraction.
That's the difficult thing with mods that have sort of a key gimmick, in that a lot of the gameplay side of things isn't talked about as much in favor of how it looks. And I've beaten on this horse a lot, and I apologize for bringing it up again, but Blade of Agony is another example of that sort of thing.
Oh, boy.
Where the focus is really on how it looks and how it's stretching the engine and that, while the gameplay side of things is sort of generally ignored.
Yeah, it's like a Tormentor 667 production or something.
Yeah, funny that.
then you compare it with something like, say, Rise of the Wool Ball, and it comes out, and the graphical presentation is non-existent. I mean,
or it still has a style in some way, like a very cartoonish style, but it's not important because
we're trying to vicariously defend Square.
No, I'm not trying to defend Square. Like, I'm not trying to have a veiled attack on Torm and
Attack of the MS Paint mods.
Honestly, if I love Rise of the Wool Ball and Shadow of the Wool Ball. I think they're amazing, yet glossed over kind of things released in the Doom community, and I'm hoping they get more eyes than just our ragtag group of Doom appreciators.
Yeah, it's something that the rest of the world needs to know about, really.
And funny thing is, Rise of the Wool Ball 2, it got a little bit embroiled because it ran on an earlier version of GC Doom 2.
But that got fixed. Turns out that was less of a design decision and more just that the author just hadn't updated their build in a while. And something had accidentally broken or something in the Z-script transition. So that was quickly fixed.
One really interesting side effect of this whole debacle is the CAC Awards. This is the most politicized decision we're going to have to front up to here, Terminus. I don't think any candidate has ever been so
hotly demanded.
Yeah, I mean, people are recommending that it be given a CAC Award purely as a means to a middle finger to the graph.
Spite award, as it were.
I mean. No, don't turn it into the Academy Awards. I mean, we already have it. That's
nice.
That's not the Academy
political...
Awards. I mean,
but maybe that's the legitimization that we need, man. Maybe this is the step that needs to be taken.
Yeah, I don't know. I could do without it turning into the Academy Awards. I was still, you know what? I know for a fact that was it me and you, Alfonso, were kind of against Square Episode 1 getting an award simply because it's not finished. I mean,
yeah.
The entire thing not finished.
Look, I'm just gonna say, we've snubbed things before out of spite. We can also award things out of spite.
Nice.
And then those things can get unsnubbed by the awards creator out of spite.
Yeah, I don't know. It just breeds bad blood all around if that happens.
Yeah.
The special mention award for not getting lynched by certain parts of the community if this didn't get an award.
Well, yeah, it'll be the most specific award awarded to anything.
Alright, well, it's way too early for us to have seriously discussed the CAC Awards, but I'm just gonna lay this out right now for everyone that's listening to. If we do give it an award, it will be based off of its own accomplishments, not the reaction to the community.
They'll be able to read through the text. There's no substance in the write-up. They'll say, obviously, we know what's going on.
They'll say that anyway.
Scuba's the one that writes through text, not me.
Oh yeah, that's right. Bullshit artist.
Am I right in thinking that KMX is not part of the writing staff for this year?
He's too busy, unfortunately.
KMX has officially penned a public retirement letter. Life has hit him hard. And unfortunately, he will no longer be part of the CAC Awards team, which is a really, really huge loss, because he was, by and far, not only the most knowledgeable, but the most enthusiastic. He just loved Doom. He loved playing Doom. Even the more questionable stuff, he was always looking for the good stuff in that, and that was good. That was good. KMX was a good guy.
I'm sure he'll swing around at some point. He doesn't seem like the sort of guy who can keep himself away.
Well, and let's be honest, we all know what happens to everyone who tries to quit Doom.
There they all come back. They all come back.
Just remember, you can never leave.
But thank you to KMX for all of the service you have ever done, and we will miss you this year.
We wish you well in your future endeavors. Is that how the press releases usually go?
Kind of.
Yeah, we have actually brought 2 people into the fold, but we'll probably leave the spoilers. We'll, wait until things
this is now we're getting into the point where we haven't released stuff. But from then on, the second biggest controversy of our community this time, the big grudge match. Alfonso, I hear you've been picking fights with other people.
Ding.
Oh, Yeah, that this was spur of the moment. Like I could dress this up as my attempt to sort of instigate a new sort of multiplayer scene in Doom World, which is very big of me. Wow, to go that far. But really, this was just this snowballed from a simple grudge match into the rest of the multiplayer scene flocking towards this silly duel. Which let's be honest, I'm gonna win. I'm going to lay the smack down.
I'm going to miss you when you're gone, Fonz.
Well, actually, part of the controversy surrounding this has been immediately before. This is largely just coincidental timing. 40 Ounce was in the multiplayer subforum of Doom World talking about how the sort of knowledge depth that you need to have in order to perform in duels or in deathmatch or something like that, and then a lot of established players kept swung by, and they said, actually, no, that's not, it's not about footwork and movement, it's actually more about aiming. And then he says, that's not really what I was trying to say. And then this whole discussion broke out.
What are you starting a shitstorm? That's weird.
Quite as an aside, I decided, okay, like, this is completely coincidental timing. I promise you, I was like, wouldn't it be great to organize a duel between the two sort of podcast hosts, main podcast hosts, in order to sort of publicize multiplayer and Doom World a little bit, tap into that untapped reservoir. And then, of course, because it coincided so strongly with this recent event, people started to swing by, and now it's ballooned into something a little larger than just a grudge match. It's become a battleground.
So, let me get this straight. A manufactured duel between two people in an attempt to promote something where people are sure that one of them is more likely to win. Is this basically the Mayweather-McGregor of Doom multiplayer?
Except both people can read.
And none of them are huge pieces of shit.
Bam! That's a gauntlet that's thrown down.
Well, it has been argued that neither of us could duel our way out of a paper bag, which is probably correct. I'm sure to people on the outside, well, no, it's true. I mean, I'm a garbage deathmatch player, but, relatively speaking, I'm probably an Adonis versus 40 Ounce.
I would say I've played against Alfonzo, and I am wowed at his ability to be as good as he is with like 200 millisecond ping, like anywhere between like 100 and 200. And I'm just like, oh my god, he lives in the lag. He knows it's like water to him. He like moves like water through the latency of the internet. And
coincidentally, it often feels like water.
Are you trying to say I'm Keanu Reeves?
And he just kicks my ass every single time.
Anyway, look, the fallout of this is that when all is said and done, I'm hoping people will be more interested in multiplayer. That's the way I'm working it up internally. That's the way that 40 Ounce and I've communicated this idea. Although publicly, of course, we won't. I mean, this is publicly, so I have said to the contrary. But yeah, I'm going to kick his ass.
Well, at the very least, it'll be a fantastic little bit of activity for the not exactly active multiplayer scene.
More importantly, it'll be a bit of activity that isn't related to like a Mega Man deathmatch or whatever. Whatever Xandro plays 24/7, 365 nowadays.
I'll have you know they play Doom.
I mean,
that's debatable.
See, it's just the question always seems to be about how do you revive the existing multiplayer community, and I think, given that it is essentially in ruins, at least the competitive scene is, a more pertinent question may be to ask, just think about making a new one.
Building a new one on the rubble.
Well, a separate one, or at least. Not to come
I was what was it? Well, last year when I was at QuakeCon, and I was talking to a bunch of other like multiplayer Doom people, like Demon Sphere, and who else was there? Was Wartorn there? No, it was Demon Sphere and shit, I forgot who else. Sorry if I forgot your handle or name, but like I was asked like, yeah, what do you you've been around a lot, Matt? What? Because I have been, I guess. And he's like, why do you think like the multiplayer Doom scene isn't as like large as it is? And I'm like, well, I'm thinking it's more than likely source port fragmentation at this point, because you have a lot of multiplayer people that are set in their ways of what feels comfortable, and they're all going to flock to the source ports that give them the options in which they can comfortably play in, or because like when you're playing a fast reflex game like Doom, you're going to be worrying a lot about how things control, how the client handles lag, and all that other stuff. And it feels like everybody has like, no, this is the way it should be, and no, this is the way it should be, and then all these ports kind of like happen, and then nothing really supports any new things, and I think it just fragments based on technology alone, and then a bunch of people like take their ball and go home elsewhere, and I think it's not going to be like maybe like a league or something. It's going to have to also be technology. But then again, I'm biased because I'm a programmer, and I kind of see this.
Well, it's very complicated as far as I understand.
Everyone has their own like little personal theory as to what's killing Zandronum, and really we can't really speak about any of them. Because there's some people that's talking about new projects aren't coming out because people aren't making things. Well, frankly, that's a big fat fucking lie. Because I started 3 entirely separate projects where, hey, make something. And the response was overwhelming. People made stuff. People made stuff in gusto. And there's another person who's talking about how Twitch streamers are somehow killing Zandronum, which I don't even know how stupid you have to be to believe that, but hey, you know, whatever.
Fucking kids with their Twitches and their Napsters and their Facebooks.
The YouTubes and the Twitters.
Yeah.
The argument, though, is that the competitive scene specifically is what's in threat, not Zandronum. I mean, obviously, multiplayer in some form shows no sign of slowing down and does have innovation in some corners. But if we're talking the competitive scene, then it's a complicated beast.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it's very... It's
can't really pinpoint one single thing.
I mean, there's also like history in the past with like the multiplayer community with like a whole bunch of like horrible moderation being done on the servers for like Z-Daemon and maybe Odomex. I don't know. I don't even know if Odomex is like a central broadcast server or a central... I know Z-Daemon at some point had kind of like a roster of like or a master ban list at some point, and there were like a select few people with grudges that ran the thing,
which is always a good sign.
Yeah, so I mean, like it feels like there's a lot of bad history, or at least like really controversial history, and you know, a select few people held, you know, all the major keys to online play, and it feels like the next time it springs up, there's always going to be a power struggle of some kind, or some kind of controversy, whether manufactured or real, that ends up trying to take the whole thing down.
Most of the time, completely manufactured.
Yeah, most of the time. Like and that's like the most. It's like it's always petty shit too.
Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, that is the nature of the beast. People love to watch that stuff. I mean, whether it's in an internet forum for in Sourceport, or a Taiwanese basket weaving forum, or pop culture commentary these days, or journalism, it's the angry stuff that brings people in. Angry brings people in.
Well, I mean, you can use that to our benefit. There's a wealth of... Like, I mean, the grudge match, as well.
Yeah, you're trying to use that to your benefit. How's that going?
Right, well, exactly, but it's clearly not as big a grudge as we're making out in the forums, right? And anyone with 2 noodles in their head should be able to put 2 and 2 together and figure out that's the case, right? If they're reading genuine animosity, well, there is to an extent. There has to be some sort of competitive element. There is, because we're competing podcasts, and he does interviews with the same people that I'm trying to interview, albeit in a different manner. So there's something there. But there's just there's just a reservoir that we can tap into in Doom World.
But we'll see how it goes from there, and hopefully it evolves into something interesting, yeah?
All I know is that the last time I joined the Dual 40 server in Zandro to get some practice time in with Fonzie, the inferior Fonz, we were joined by a couple of South American dudes who promptly decided to destroy us and not say a single word. I'm like, jeez.
Wow.
There's insularity there, and then there's...
Wow, 40 Ounce was practicing.
Damn.
Moving on to something that isn't a controversy.
Yet.
Boy, after all of that hot fire stuff, it would be nice to move into something simple. Kinsie, I hear you've got a hot new release out, Juvenile Power Fantasy.
Well, I wouldn't say hot, but yeah, I've been doing a new mod for the last couple of months, and I kicked it out recently, and people seem to like it. It's, like, I haven't been, like, shouted at over it yet, so that's a good sign.
So what is...
Sorry.
Yeah, how about you explain the mod?
Yeah, so what the heck
So it's
is
a
it?
mod that's sort of, it started out sort of like as a tribute to like Corey Whittle's older Edge gameplay mods, like Immoral Conduct and Don's Challenge. And then I just sort of started throwing ideas at it to the point where it just sort of looks like those inspirations viewed through a funhouse mirror. So like all the monsters move a lot faster, they reload, they get flung around off their feet by explosions, and there's a bunch of reloading stuff, and you can dodge, and it's just this weird mess of ideas in that being played around with, and it's been a lot of fun to mess with.
Skeleton. What does that mean?
Yeah, it's not quite at the point where I'd consider it 1.0 yet, so it's like the skeleton version. It needs more meat.
So what's the goal of your mod? Just change? Are you increasing the difficulty in some way, or are you trying to make the player think differently about approaching certain threats and stuff? What was the embryo that of the idea that made you go down this path of creating this thing?
Well, I'd done a lot of stuff with Doom previously, which was very it was sort of tied to the pre-existing ideas of the Doom series, since that was what it was a tribute to. And there are a bunch of ideas I had that really couldn't fit in that, and I also just wanted to do my own silly thing. So once Doom was more or less put to bed, I could sort of go a little bit stir-crazy. And it also means that I could do like a Heretic support, a Hexen support in the future, so I'll be able to play around with ideas on how to sort of create a new experience out of those games. Like, I have a few ideas on how to make Hexen not shit.
I feel like the way that Matt phrases that question sort of highlights for me the different philosophies that he might have, having worked on Square with the way that some mods are developed, like on the Zedum forums. He's looking for a very honed and specific sort of answer to a question like, what is it? What is it for?
Why does this exist?
Precisely you're trying to do. But
my question is, why does this exist? And not I don't mean to put phrase that as a put down. I mean to phrase it as a what does this bring to the table? What new stuff?
I think the phrase you're looking for is selling point. What is the selling point of this? Like a short
that too. Yeah.
Things. What is this?
Why does this pitch it? Why would I play this? Why would I play this mod? Go.
Very fast-paced gunfight style gameplay where you're sort of like diving in and out of cover, and everything's fast. Everything dies fast, including you, including them. And I have a bit of a sense of humor to it as well, so that's good.
So like it would be on the have you ever played like Hotline Miami?
Yeah, so like not quite to that extent. Like you can take more than one hit before dying, but there's that sort of frenetic sort of feel to it.
So like always feeling vulnerable at all times.
One of the things that I wanted to play around with it was sort of adding a little more analog to events that are sort of very split apart in Doom gameplay. Like if a monster goes off its feet, for example, it's dead. So, for example, if you hit a monster with an explosion and it stays alive, it gets flung off its feet, then gets back up. And that sort of changes up the gameplay and changes up the behavior and creates a new sort of because now you can like shoot a rocket at an group of enemies, and even if they don't die, they'll be distracted for a second or two while they pick themselves back up.
Oh, you want something that changes up encounters? Kinsie, tell them what you did with the DM spawns.
One of the things I played around with is that now sometimes in single player there's a random chance that a crate will appear on deathmatch spawns. And if you shoot that, like, items usually come out. And it's usually like heretic items, like the portable medkits and that. I say usually because sometimes a live hand grenade falls out, and you want to stay away from those.
Kind of like I'm starting to think like the well, just the game that readily comes to mind is like Shatterhand, where you have like a couple of stuff that has like bonuses and whatever, and you punch them open and everything, and then one of them, or just a couple of them, will start getting booby trapped, and I don't think it's random every time. It's predictable, but it's like one of those things where it's like, you know, the win some lose some type of element to
yeah, you have to,
sort of thing.
You have
kind
to
of like
stop and register for a second what's come out of the crate before you dive in.
Yeah, like kind of like the what is it, the mimics, and if you've ever also played like Nuclear Throne,
yeah, I actually want to add mimics at some point. Health kit mimics.
Yeah, so like there's like in that game there's for those of you who have not played it, there's like it's like a kind of like a roguelite type of thing where you're like shooting things and they die and whatever, and so there's treasure chests in each world, and they would contain either ammo, health, or guns or whatever, but some of them that just don't have that shiny sheen to them will either like look like it like licks their lips, like a tongue sticks out of them, and then if you try to open them you get eaten. But it's not very often that happens, so you will inevitably waste ammo shooting at every chest thinking it's a mimic. So it adds that little bit of unexpectedness and making you actually, you know, be a little bit more observant than just willy-nilly shoot first before picking up later.
Mimics are great, but I don't think any mimic will ever be better than the ones in Dark Souls.
Once you learn their telltale signs, or I mean, they're not random ever. So once you've gone through the game once, they become non-threatening. I find.
But that first time you meet one.
Yeah. Oh my god.
One of my favorite mods I remember seeing in the past, it was a mod for Dark Souls that increased like all the monster aggro ranges to extreme values.
Oh, I've seen that. Oh my god.
So you'd just be wandering around on this staircase or whatever, and then you'd look across to the opposite staircase, and you'd see a mimic sneaking up, and then it would notice that you're looking and immediately hide again, like it was a Metal Gear Solid box.
Yeah. It's like, this chest isn't here. This chest is not supposed to be here.
But enough about me. Let's talk about some stuff that actually has a chance of being good. So, Dusk put out a new trailer recently.
Man, don't sell yourself short. Gotta work on it. Gotta figure out what makes it good and then just work on that.
Don't worry. I have complete faith in Kinsie's ability to make immoral conduct as per Smash TV.
I've played it last year at PAX Oz. I think it's the same build that Term played, since it was sort of around that time. It's one of those games that has promise, but I'm not sure how much it will fulfill that promise because it relies heavily on the level design.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the whole key thing of its design is that all the levels are handcrafted like back in the day, and that's cool and all, but those levels have to be good.
What gives you reason to suspect they might not be? I mean, I understand that it's a bit concerning that this is the selling point. You know, in the wake of Strife and sort of pre-generated levels and stuff, people are going, "Oh God,
so many
handcrafted
levels! I am so sick of pre-generated levels. I am so sick of pre-generated levels."
The reason I'm concerned about it is that, well, while there's various people working on it, it's primarily a one-man project. And
much, yeah. I met the guy. He's a swell dude.
I met their PR guy. Also swell, but in different ways.
Oh, you met Dave Oshry? you met Dave Oshry. He's like, oh my god, I love this game. You're gonna love it too. He's like a bundle of energy, and I just can't. I'm just like, all right, I just want to talk to the guy who's making it. All right, Dave. He was there.
Swelling bundle of energy.
Complete bundle of energy.
But yeah, I feel like I have this worry that the guy might be wearing too many hats, and so certain parts of the game may suffer as he's trying to fix up and get other parts ready for prime time. And while the levels that I played weren't bad, they didn't really give me an indication of how that'll stretch out through a full game.
Right.
I mean, there's no short of analogies, I'm sure. if we look inward into the community for people who should have outsourced some of the work rather than do everything themselves. Does anything existing sort of strike you as something that might be like one for one what Dusk has as problems?
Well, have I ever told you about my mapping ability?
Yeah, it's terrible. Yeah. No, I mean, like, now. It's terrible now. Everybody was terrible at some point. But it's like you got to do more of it in order to improve.
Then I'll be terrible tomorrow, too.
Oh, who is making Dusk? David Zemansky? This is not his, like, first rodeo in terms of making stuff. Oh, yeah. Like, like a while back, he, like, it was mostly a lot of, what we consider walking simulators, like in Unity and stuff like that, where it's like something narrative based or like something puzzle based, but still like all first person. And he's still drawing from a lot of experience and playing a lot of old Quake, Doom, and all this other stuff. And I mean, all it takes is like, you know, time and effort to get like, you know, an idea made manifest in some kind of a tool set or platform that you're making a game in. And I don't know, like it feels like there's a lot of love and attention being put in it. And all I've really played was like and this was like going back a year when nobody knew of Dusk. I get to put on my hipster glasses. Nobody knew of Dusk, and I'm its original fan. And it was at QuakeCon last year, and I was like, "Whoa, what's this?" And it was a very, very old school, style type of first-person shooter, and I liked how it moved. I didn't quite like certain encounters in like the one map that was there for. It was like the very first map. Like of episode 1, kind of like the intro to everything type of map, but it hit all the right notes for me gameplay wise, and
it's fun to move around in, which immediately puts it well above rack.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, like, what is it like? If what is it? If the gameplay isn't if the gameplay isn't fun, moving around in it should still at least be fun, and as what is it? So that still drives like the feedback loop of this still feels good to play, and once you have that down, then everything else is kind of like stuff to interact with, and then when you have enough of that, then the game just stays fun. Hopefully, like, you know, you hope it doesn't get monotonous, but it from what I've played, I think it's in good hands. The thing I would be weird. A little bit pensive or anxious about would be if Dave starts getting the fatigue of doing a lot. Yeah, like the one person thing that you were talking about.
You must be the original fan if you're referring to him as Dave.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing. A person on the internet once said that like when they were waiting for things to come out that will be like the classic FPS of yesteryear, like that bring that feeling back. They mentioned Dusk and Adventures of Square in the same breath, and I'm hoping that his success helps my and our team's success.
That's fair.
So I mean, I'm gonna see him again at QuakeCon coming up in like I don't know when this is gonna be up on Doom Radio, but it's in like 2 weeks from now, so I'll be at QuakeCon.
Matt the Millipede Tropiano sticking all of his feet in all the doors.
Yeah, and I mean, hey man, it's networking. It's oh yeah, what was it? Something else to mention. David Zemansky gave Square, I guess, its first major testimonial that we now threw up on our website. Nice. There. So I'm piggybacking. He's bigger than us at this point, very much so, because he's got, you know, a publisher behind him and venture money, and so something funding his hopefully good success for him to keep making more stuff. And I was like, oh shit, I got to piggyback on his visibility a little bit. Hell yeah, like but it's not bad coattails to ride. It's not like I'm trying to like hitch a ride on like id Software or some like giant hit. It's a I mean, not to say that Dusk is small. I'm kind of saying it's a It's we're moving through this together.
Well, Matt is busy untangling himself from the bind that he's put himself in.
We are really painting ourselves as the picture of modesty over here at Doomworld.
I'm saying
reinventing the multiplayer scene, and then Matt.
No, I'm not saying that I am Christ reborn, but
I too sincerely hope my colleague's success gives me glory.
No, I'm not saying it exactly like that. I'm just saying, like, if he could prove that people are still interested in classic FPSs, then that also means people will be interested in other stuff that follows the same style, and that's good because I don't know. I don't want to be I might want a career change at some point. You know, this is like Square's a portfolio piece. Really, it's a
go from a
that I'm slowly
comfy, successful job into being an indie game dev.
Yeah, then I get to sleep on everybody's couch.
Matt, if you want to innovate in this space, then you have a certain flag to erect in this space as well, and you need to stop using the word gameplay for start, which is a useless word. I understand that maybe everyone in the indie development scene does use it, but for all your talk of gameplay and emergent gameplay, I think you should stop using that word. No one says read play or something like that when they're talking about books, do they?
Wait, what are you referring to, Alfonso?
I'm saying that you're painting yourself as the cutting edge of classic FPS moving forward, and you may want to make a career change. Then you're going to have to be wary of the certain molds that you should not be suckered into so early.
No.
This horrible terminology like gameplay needs to be thrown out the window. And this is another soapbox of mine that I could jump on with regards to the community. I'm not going to do that.
Well, wait, no. Hey, hang on a second here. You sound like you have a point to make. In regards of what was it? Like you're in the creativity or art, and
you're not so far removed from many of the other figureheads of the Doom world. I don't see why. If you're going to be painting yourself as the head honcho moving forward, then I'm not saying
I'm a head honcho.
Okay, all right.
Look, the head honcho right now is Sergeant Mark IV for whatever reason.
That's true.
When did my podcast become a soapbox?
For whatever reason, like he seems to be like in all the game journalism blogs and
look, I'm just planting the seed, okay? The element of doubt is there. Now you can stop.
No, I'm not. Look, I don't like just
like
in case.
The bone. It'll pick away at your conscience slowly over time.
Look, just in case Mr. Szymanski is listening to this podcast,
we sincerely apologize.
No. I want you to succeed. I definitely do. I absolutely do. That is something that
he wants you to succeed so he can get glory.
How dare you?
Szymanski once said that Demon Steel was among some of the most fun he's had playing Doom, so I'm happy. I'm real happy.
There you go. Man spreading love everywhere.
Just as long as he's spreading man love everywhere. Recently, Chasm the Rift, which is a fairly obscure old FPS by the guys that went on to do the Carnivore series of dinosaur hunting games. Source port came out for it recently. Reverse engineered from the original DOS EXE by... I don't remember who did it actually, but I think it was from Russia?
The project name is appropriately named Chasm Reverse, though the source port itself is named PanzerChasm. And it is, well, it's pretty much Chasm the Rift. It is probably the last game that anyone expected to have as a source port, but it's interesting. Now, the point of the Chasm the Rift, it's basically the sort of not Quake. It was designed to compete with Quake, but let's be honest. that's a that's a David and Goliath scenario right there, and David ain't has any slang. So
one of the interesting things about Chasm is that while the visuals are all Quake style and that, the level design is actually sort of Wolfenstein style. It's all tile based, except all the tiles are 3D modeled. And it created this really weird feel back in the day where, like, the levels looked sort of complex, but they really, really weren't.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those weird things that just sort of didn't quite gel together with itself.
And the critics spanked it for it. I mean,
this was a game that came out after Quake, but it didn't have OpenGL, it didn't have multiplayer at launch.
mm-hmm.
It was the definition of also
Well, neither did Quake.
Still, it was interesting. It looked neat, the enemies were interesting, the weapons were cool, and it was about time-traveling space marines. You went through different periods of history, picked up all sorts of different weapons, fought a variety of different enemies.
Shotgun the lizard jester with saw blades for arms.
So what? I mean, is it like a Hexen situation in that there are enough sort of features developed from the base engine that, if you wanted to, with enough time and effort, now with you have the source code at hand, you could feasibly improve upon the game? Is that? I mean, because with Hexen, of course, there's an elaborate inventory system, and then it doesn't have to be a game about switch and stuff. There's what's added to Chasm the Rift.
Fonz, I'm just gonna ask you right here: how many Hexen mods do you know of?
That are good?
Yes.
I better be on that list.
Look, I say Hexen, I could easily say Heretic.
Okay, how many Heretic mods do you know?
The number from 1. Fine, 1. I was going to say 1.
He totally dodged it.
There's
dodged
Kronos. Kronos is the only decent.
Okay, how many Strife mods do you know of?
Because Matt's here, I guess I should say Scourge.
Dare you?
It was okay.
No, the mapping is kind of.
But is Chasm the Rift like that? What does it have that is unique? That because it's all about talking about the story, but that's particular to the game in stock.
Probably the unique thing about it, gameplay-wise, in Chasm is that monsters sort of like you can blow parts off of them, and they sort of adjust their behavior to match. That was sort of its gimmick, I suppose.
Doesn't sound strong enough.
Like I said, the game itself is just a sort of weird piece of history, but the graphics look nice in that old retro FPS, low poly style. There's some weirdly interesting little bits and pieces of how it does stuff. It just sort of feels like this. Like I said, it's an also-ran, but there's sort of interesting little lessons that can be picked up from it. And having it be more accessible than just like a DOS-box wrapper makes it easier to go back and sort of see how it did things and like take lessons away from it.
Okay, that makes sense.
So, moving on, we bag a lot on procedurally generated levels around these parts. And that's often due to bad implementation, where designers just sort of like glue rooms together randomly and hope it makes up for a lack of actual content.
Or if I may add, the people think that just the randomization of the environment is a driving force for replayability, when it really should be the design of how the replayability affects gameplay itself.
Wow. There's that word again.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. But it's what it's all about, Fonz. Am I going to encounter new things or new setups every single time I play? And just the environment itself is not good enough.
One of the better implementations of procedurally generated levels I've played recently is a utility for Doom called Oblige. And it sort of really builds up on the old slide and that by randomly generating levels, but they're actually pretty good. And that they're sort of on the level like low to medium tier level designers. And like being able to spit out a new megawatt at the click of a button works really well, especially with certain mods like Doom Roguelike Arsenal. And I'm mentioning this because Oblige 7.666 came out recently. And it's possibly the final version.
Yeah, he has officially put the end on it.
I can't imagine that Andrew, who works on it, Andrew Apted, I can't imagine that he would want to keep working on that forever. Like, at some point, you're going to have to say, okay, this is all I would want to do with it. And I mean, either
I believe so. Yeah.
Isn't it open source? Is it like something on GitHub or whatever? So I mean, like, yeah, it's at this point, you're either move on and hand the keys to whomever wants to make a fork. But like, yeah, this has been. Was it Oblige has been around for, I want to say...
I think the blog post said he's been working on it for 12 years.
Yeah, that's a long time. I was going to say 8, and I still don't think that was enough years. Yeah, 12 years. That's a lot. That's a lot to pour into a... I'm sure it was also like off and on, but it's a lot of time of upkeep to a random generator for Doom maps, and that's not even an easy task. Like, in order to keep things interesting or actually have things look different enough to be considered like engaging and stuff like that, or at least playable and interesting. It is
not a trivial problem.
A severe undertaking, something like that.
So that it's been accomplished so well is fantastic. And I also like that he's sort of bad out after putting together one big final release, just putting a bow on the whole thing, then walking away satisfied. That's the sort of behavior I think a lot of projects would benefit from, just sort of like saying, yep, I'm done, let's put the bow on it, and that's it. And I'm as guilty of that as anyone.
Hey, Essel, are you listening?
Oh boy. Here we go again. Infinitely receding decimal points in development builds. It's 0.66666 B C D E. I mean, I imagine Matt's going to be one of the only people in Doom World who, because of his programming background, is going to take some degree of interest in this. But like, Oblige is another example of a project that occupies a completely different space in Doom World than it does everywhere else, essentially. And I can understand why, pairing up with mods for testing, you just need a cool testing ground for mods and stuff like that, and so it occupies... I can understand why there'd be an interest there, but for everyone else, I imagine in Doom World, that speaks to me as well. I was like, unless... I would sooner play a handcrafted bad map than I would do something that is incredibly fun, but didn't have a human behind it. Or at least, someone... Because Andrew can't get credit for every single Oblige. Well, he can, but he can only get credit once. It doesn't mount with every generated thing.
Right. I mean, like, what is it? Speaking as a programmer, it's, there is there's like a weird, so you're the author of the algorithm or the and the data that goes into the algorithm, but it's also whatever numbers seed the random number generator, also doing the work. It's also the it's a lot of what is it? When you make an algorithm, you're just making the rules, and it's all the little unexpected things that happen just by your rule set. It's all those little unexpected things that make the art or the magic, if I want to get like dramatic about it. But it's the and the interesting things about that is what gets produced that I don't expect based on the rules that are crafted by me, and that's kind of what happens when you make something that does all this random generation stuff, and humans can only see so far, and we use tools like computers to go further beyond after we set the design and rules.
It's basically the entire point that separates the human touch from an industry touch. We've got all of this sort of design by document as to what makes a map fun, how to design encounters, how to design layouts, and theoretically a robot can put all of that into practice, but it's a human that designs the fun parts, what makes it fun, what makes it different, what makes it unique. Like, Ancient Aliens is incredibly unorthodox. It does a whole bunch of outright crazy things. The spider turrets in the first episode, for example. Just an infinite turret of spider. Well, not infinite. I mean, there's only like 6 or 7 or 8 or so, but having to constantly dive between cover as the spiders bombard you and going through enemy encounters that way, that is unique. That is fun.
You can codify a bunch of rules as to what makes a good level, and a computer can execute on those pretty well. But a human can subvert those rules and surprise the player. And that creates new and unique experiences. Yeah, again, Ancient Aliens with its cyber demon turret in the first level.
I'm sure you could build in flaws into the system, though, couldn't you? So that it could appear to have the element of human failure, whatever. That's sort of what makes art interesting. But in addition to what you're saying, I mean, a lot of the decisions that humans make when it comes to level design is in response to current trends and stuff like that. I mean, there's a question of how advanced you can make an AI and do, and I doubt Andrew is going to sit around sort of programming Oblige to mimic all the different sort of facets of human ingenuity when it comes to responding to trends in art. And then, I mean, here we're philosophizing on a level that I don't think Doom is prepared to.
No. I mean, it's fine. Like, what is it? It's a quote by I was just looking it up right now. If you heard like keys tapping, it's by one of my my main influences or inspirations in computer science, Dr. Grace Hopper, and she said, "No computer is ever going to ask a new reasonable question. It takes trained people to do that." So really, all a human really can do with the aid of a computer is set rules, and the computer will never do anything new. It's always acting on the rules that are set. And so when we discover that certain setups are fun or whatever, those are new rules. But that's only because it's the feedback of other humans that tells us, oh, I really enjoyed this thing. I really enjoyed
until we get to, Oblige Singularity Edition, at which point I'll happily just I'll happily jump on board and play anything it puts out, because then it effectively is, human and more.
Yeah. What is it? I want to set something up with Dime where we both generate the exact same megawatt and we race to the end. I've always wanted to do something like that, or like just see something like that happen. Like just have like a roguelike Doom experience, but see who can get to the end of.
I've been trying to think of unique ways to solve the sort of problem that I have in the Doom World Iron Man League at the moment, which you may know I'm helping run, which is that some people obviously approach a map set blind, and then other people's there's no way of getting around it. They'll have intimate knowledge of the set, and if you could procedurally generate something that is perfect for Iron Man, and then everyone starts from a clean slate,
there's just no real way.
Cool. There's just no real way.
But hey, this seems like a nice little segue. Since you guys are so interested in talking about different styles of play and how things have been playing recently, what have you been playing recently?
Your shit. I've been playing Hunting Drifter a lot. I'm having a lot of fun with it. It feels like you can. It's similar to Demon Steel in that you can sort of add flavor to the combat at any given moment. Like you can just intermittently whip things and then pistol whip surprise. I don't know. It feels like mix and match. It's like a freestyle combat, and it makes everything off the cuff very interesting. Easy to
can constantly alternate between long range and short range at a moment's notice.
That's right.
Yeah, although I feel like if a game doesn't prompt reasons for the player to use short range over long range, it just becomes additional. It just becomes additional. Not. I was gonna say the word fluff, but it isn't. I mean,
the fluff is the stuff. That's like the selling point. To me, it seems like that way.
No, but then you run afoul of the just loading in features, and that somehow because not everybody's going to use every feature.
Matt,
I feel like it's.
I'm gonna tell you something.
I mean, yeah.
I have added a feature that allows you to throw your hat. It does absolutely nothing. I have noticed.
Does one damage.
I have noticed a lot of people using it anyway because for some reason it's just fun.
I mean, like, yeah, okay.
It's true to grace. I have loads of fun trying to whip things down to size and then throwing my hat at it and seeing if I can get the killing blow. It is like Magpie Syndrome.
Stuff for
except
flavor.
For combat.
I mean, stuff for flavor is still fun. I mean, I'm just saying. Ah, jeez. Like, if I have to turn a critical eye to something for some reason, it's going to be. I think what is it? It's a general annoyance with what people consider quality. Not to say that High Noon Drifter is bad.
It's very bad.
It's very good. I will get that out of the way right now. It's very good.
Stop lying to me. Stop lying to me.
I enjoyed it. I'm not lying. I'm not lying. Look, if anybody could take constructive criticism, it's going to be the people that like, you know, actually care about this sort of thing, which you definitely do. But so like it's kind of like it's that zeitgeist of more is better, I fucking hate that. It's all about what do I take away and still maintain the essence of what I want the game to be, or the mod to be, and what is, how does it actually change gameplay to keep things interesting.
But I think if you add up the separate components in High Noon Drifter, you'll find that there aren't that many features. It's just that they're each so fun to use, and they're equally effective in their use, that you can happily just juggle between the two. And it feels like you're doing a lot more than is necessary, but really there aren't many components there. It's fun to make the match.
I do like one thing I really liked is, like, I mean, there is like a slight like extra, what's it, a risk component where it takes more time to cram more shells into the double-barreled shotgun, and then like shoot like all 4 shells at once, and there's like a longer cooldown period. I like stuff like that introduce, like, okay, you get more kick, but it's gonna cost you time and a little bit of vulnerability afterwards, and I like those sorts of things, and I enjoyed, like, that's one tiny little thing that I enjoyed out of all the rest of the enjoyment in that mod, that there still is a semblance of okay, the player has choice, but those choices have consequences.
Trying to rationalize it in that way, but when I'm loading those shells, that's just time for me to taunt the fucker. I'm just going, I'm slowly loading these, you bitch ass. I'm gonna load it up and then 400. By the way, I've been playing it with Zaz's damn numbers.
Oh yeah,
just spit out numbers every single time you shoot something.
Oh,
and that is delicious. I've been talking about Magpie Syndrome. There's nothing better than watching the numbers fly. The only thing I wish he added was a dimsims font. That's it. That's the end of that.
Dimsims font.
The food dimsims. This really would have gone down a lot better if you know your culinary arts.
You mean dim sum?
Is that what I said?
Yeah.
What did I say? Dim sims? It's dim sims.
You said
it's dim sims.
I know the food dim sum, but
come on, Google, work with me here.
I've heard dim sum. Yeah.
There is a culture gap here.
Oh my god.
I'm correct. Dim sim.
Is it across the Pacific? It's called something different.
Here in Australia, and to a lesser extent, fuck.
What?
Okay, Wikipedia just shut me
dim
down.
sum?
Sorry, it's alright. Currently,
yeah.
it's dim sims. It's
another blue and yellow. It's another.
Fucking Kinsie didn't even come to my aid. This is embarrassing.
My time will come.
Wow. All right, we all said some embarrassing shit tonight. Except for Kinsie. Kinsie's
actually been taking the reins, like all y'all have been talking. He's been like, "Hey guys, focus."
Hey, I'm a guest. Damn it.
Well, how about you, Kins? What have you been playing?
I've been playing a bunch of Heretic lately, as a part of testing my mod, and
what a coincidence!
It's been interesting to see, like, one of the gripes I have with Heretic and trying to mod for it, I guess, is that there's not a lot of art assets in it in comparison to Doom and Doom 2.
99 textures, I think.
I think it's like a third of the textures that are in Doom or something. And as a result, it makes level design pretty difficult. And it's interesting. And it's interesting to see how Raven managed to use those textures effectively and make areas that seemed reasonably distinct with so little visual themes in it. It doesn't always work. There's probably more weird bathhouses than a medieval world would probably have, but
bathhouses. Physical textures.
Yeah.
They do some interesting stuff with it, and overall, I very much enjoy Heretic.
And I'd absolutely recommend, for anyone listening, to check out Wayfarer, which is currently under the works by Not Jabber. He seems to know his stuff. He's really keen on fleshing out the mechanics of Heretic to make. It's like a some more normalized Curse of Disparal, I want to say, for anyone who's played that, sort of minus the slaughtery elements. Gargoyles flying around like fireworks because of the low mass, that sort of thing. But what was I going to say? I can't remember. I'll have to come back to it. There's something to do
I've been playing.
Oh wait, no,
I was
sorry.
I was also going to toss in another suggestion. Elf Gets Pissed by Rock King.
Yep. Elf Gets Pissed is a classic and definitely needs to be played. I guess the best way to describe it is sort of like Heretic, but fed through modern Doom mapping sensibilities.
Right. Yeah, that's a good way. I probably should have described Wayfarer in that manner as well. Now, what I was going to say is that because I've been approached to write music for Wayfarer, and there's been some. And I've done that before for Realm of Bathoris. It's in an interesting space at the moment, Heretic, because it is receiving increasing interest. But it's still at the point where everyone thinks the assets that should be contributed to it, or the music that should be made for it, should sound or look relatively similar to the sort of suggestive of what the original setting of Heretic is. Whereas in Doom, you can happily put things in a jungle or even in a fantasy setting like with Eternal or something. But when it comes to Heretic, it's like, no, it must remain fantasy. Yeah. Having an elf wandering around at a tech base wouldn't make any sense or anything like that. So all the music that I'm composing for it at the moment is still using... I don't agree with that, by the way.
I just want to... Whoever said that, I just want to point you towards the Great Bay Temple in Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask.
Oh, that's been such a long time since I played that.
That is very much a tech base, and it was probably one of the best levels in the game.
Majora's Mask was just such a trip.
It really was.
It was like... Nintendo was like, okay, we got Ocarina of Time out the way. Let's do some interesting shit.
That game was made in like 1 year.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was a very short amount of time.
I think it was mostly a new team.
Mm-hmm.
And I think...
Who was that? Sandy Peterson.
And if I remember the interview correctly, the 1 year deadline was instated because the various delays that Ocarina of Time got, shop owner actually chewed Miyamoto out over it one day. Just like some random shopkeeper.
Jesus.
Nice.
Wow.
And near the end of development, Miyamoto was like, would you guys like an extension or something? Because... And the director was like, no, we have gotten this far.
It was taxing. It was incredibly taxing.
It feels like Majora's Mask was a mission pack to Ocarina of Time just because of the reused assets and models and
definitely.
Stuff like that.
It feels like that Ocarina of Time 2 sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like if...
But no less good. It was really good and stands really well as itself, by itself, by its own merits.
If Ocarina of Time was Quake, then Majora's Mask was Dissolution of Eternity. And that's where the analogy kind of falls apart if you think about it. Okay.
I don't know, I have a special place in my heart for Scourge of Armagon.
Yeah. I've actually been playing through Heretic as well, and I've got to echo Kinsey's sentiments pretty much. I mean, I love Heretic. I love Heretic. I love it from the top of its hood to the bottom of its pointy elven shoes. I love Heretic. Even if it's basically just a Doom clone, Check's Quest has shown that just a Doom clone is still incredibly fun because the base gameplay is really, really cool.
And half the games that came out in 1994 proved that making a competent Doom clone is very hard.
Yes.
Yeah.
Check's Quest is garbage. There, I said it.
Oh,
you get the fuck out of this podcast right now, I swear to God.
I liked Hexen over Heretic for like just aesthetic reasons, and I felt the gameplay, even though there was slightly less variety in terms of bestiary and weapon stuff, it felt like more like a polished...
I mean, I just have a contractual obligation to hold up Kaboom cereal. That's why I hate Check's Quest.
I mean, Kinsey was talking about the texture choice, but I think the biggest problem with Heretic and Hexen are also its biggest technological advancements. That is the inventory system. I mean, on paper, the Tome of Power is incredible. I love it to death. It's like a book of kick-assery. You whip it out in desperate situations and it turns your weapons into death dealers. Great. Love it. Awesome. Quad damage on impact. Right. Cool. it's not actually that. The problem, one, the effects your weapons have in comparison to before and after, they're not always related. Like, seriously, what relation does the Hellstaff, which is basically a reskinned plasma rifle, what relation does it have to the charged version, which starts spewing out rain in a specific area?
The thing that you're trying to get at, I think, is that Heretic and Hexen don't really communicate what their inventory items do very well.
Not just that, there's also the placement of them. Like, one thing that's really easy in terms of mapping is you can start placing different items throughout the map, and you can always reasonably guess, okay, the player is going to have this amount of health at this area, I can deal this amount of damage to them.
Right.
Or likewise, okay, so the player has the Berserk here, so I can put up some melee encounters. You can't really do that with Heretic, because more players than not nowadays, they have this hoarding syndrome. They want to hoard everything.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then you end up carrying over those items to the next level, only to discover that, they're all gone now because they only carry a maximum of 1 of any item, and you could have used them at any point in the level previously, but there wasn't a setup that suggested they needed to be used. So you actually go through most of the game not using about 90% of the items. The level design does not support the mechanics of the inventory.
Yeah, that's what I was going to get at. Like, the level design still feels like it's Doom, and then the inventory system's tacked on. It's kind of, that kind of goes into the adding features but never not testing them. It's like more does not equal better. And it's like yeah, okay, the power up system is via the inventory now, but they're just never made to be useful.
Well, I mean,
I
would argue that the inventory system's fine, really. It could be tweaked slightly. This is where we could talk to Altazimuth, and he's implementing them, supporting in Eternity at the moment. But it's just the way they're implemented in the levels. The levels don't support it properly, right? And that's where something like Elf Gets Pissed, Rocking Set, or the Wayfarer at the moment are working to improve. Although they are also, like, Rocking, I've laid the groundwork in editing, because it's a Zandronum set. He added to the gameplay, and it needed to be done, because it's not like you don't need to touch Doom. There are a few things that would change. You'd probably remove the backpack or edit the backpack somewhat, something like that. A few other tweaks and stuff. But Heretic, like, the scene can't grow around Heretic unless that it's. Why does a Were-Dragon drop 10 arrows? Why? It's like, this is horribly out of balance.
Why do the disciples randomly drop a tome of power?
Right,
fuck up
exactly.
Everything.
Exactly. I mean, there's this, and this is particular to Raven as well. It's true in Hexen. It's suggested in this sort of, if you look at the code of some of the monsters and the weapons, like the fire mace, which for some reason only spawns 75% of the time, or is it 25% in given spots? And then it occasionally spits out a larger ball, which deals more damage than the other ones, and then it's finely tuned and makes no sense whatsoever. Like, the Reaver in Hexen has a life-sucking ability when it gets into melee. You would never notice that. You could play the game for 20 years and you would never notice that.
People play Doom for 20 years and don't notice that the Berserk lasts the entire level.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Well, they should be extradited immediately, frankly. They should have that.
This talk of features that you'd never notice reminds me, I read a behind-the-scenes thing recently, interviewing the developer of the Alien Breed 3D games that were on the Amiga. They were sort of these mediocre Doom clones that did some sort of interesting things technologically, like the second one had a bunch of... Well, the second one had this crazy AI system added, where monsters would go to the location where they saw a sound, where they heard a sound, and then they'd split up and start looking in different places for you. And that was very impressive technically. It was very fun for the programmer to do. You would never notice it playing it, and it bogged the CPU down so the game ran like shit.
Damn.
Yeah. You know what it is? Like, you have to tell the player that that's what the enemy's doing. What was it? It was a quote by Cliff Bleszinski when he was like making Gears of War. He said, the most interesting thing, like, to engage the player in the game or make it seem like the enemies are smarter than they actually are, is they bark out what they're trying to do against the player's party. Like, they're like, oh, they're flanking us, and like stuff like that.
That's the big lesson that came out of Half-Life and Fear.
Yeah, like the thing is, the dumbest thing possible to do is tell your enemy what you're doing, and yet it's still fun.
Yeah, like, I think the biggest advancement with Doom clones and Doom-style games and retro FPSs, a lot of people sort of try and stick to the old-style stuff, like the old ways of doing levels, the old ways of doing graphics and that. But the biggest advancement in gameplay design since then, that people still unquestionably include now, even in these like throwback games, is communicating to the player better. There's more tooltips, things are better explained. Like when we were going back to talking about Heretic and Hexen, like when you play Hexen, nowadays you basically need the manual with you, because you just looking at half of the inventory items, you'd have no idea what they actually do. You just got this big collection of esoteric icons, and some of them might just give you like 2 hit points of armor, or one of them might summon a Minotaur. And that's one of the things that makes it difficult to go back to Hexen, because just trying to use the right tool for the right situation. They sort of offloaded the decision-making from the weapons to the inventory items, and it didn't work very well at all. Also, the fucking centaurs.
Yeah, the centaurs are. I started making a mod, or like a level set around Hexen, recently that I need to get back to, but like, you know, Square and other stuff is occupying my time, and I was like, how do I make the centaurs fun? How do I make the centaurs fun again? And
Delete them.
like either you can't not use them, but I was like, maybe if like I added or modded something in where if you use like a tome of like a disc of repulsion when their shield was up, it blasts away their shield and now they don't have shields, like something to like so that the player makes them less annoying via
introducing more features. This is something I would have thought you would say, though, is that introducing more features in order to counter bad features.
It's like I toyed around with like they only use their shields if you're close up, so you're like using long range weapons is always useful, or like you like the Slaughters will always fire on you after they're pain state, and they hardly use their shields as shields unless you're like close up. Like I was trying to figure out how to make centaurs engaging so that the player has to change up their tactics slightly for them, and the consistency still is less of a makes it less of a drag to face them, but it is so tough to get right.
I'd probably get around that problem just by having 3 centaurs, so I could just hit them each on the head while the other one has its shield raised. Just bash more things.
Bop, bop, bop. Like 3 Stooges.
But interestingly, of course, is that a lot of people play the cleric because of that. I'm not sure if it's a bug or a feature. It wouldn't surprise me if it was a feature that you can use the disc of repulsion on the flechettes, exactly, and then it tears through things. And that's one of the only examples I can think of Hexen or Heretic where it has a particularity that sort of gives the game a bit of a boost in that respect. Like Doom has plenty of those things, little bugs, like the Archvile will only do 20 damage to you if you hug a like 32 unit high wall or something, that sort of thing, or you can hug a pain elemental, that sort of thing. Otherwise, these Raven features are just too nitty and aren't invisible.
It's bug exploitation for at least the cleric.
High graph.
So what you're saying is that Raven were too good at making games, and it resulted in their games being bad.
So good that no one noticed.
The thing about a lot of features I've noticed that I have been thinking a lot in terms of like design when I'm working on weapons, when I'm working on features, when I'm working on stuff, it's the idea that how will the player know about this? Because I was
Conveyance is always a horrible question.
I mean, we all make fun of the BioShock Infinite. Wait a minute, that card. But I was watching a stream in Epic 2 that a friend was doing, and it's that map in space where you have to hit a pillar a certain number of directions on the symbols in order to activate the teleporter, and the answer to the puzzle is literally spelled out for you on a mural in a room that's just a little bit ago. And of course, when we all saw it, we made that "wait a minute, that card" jokes. And then he gets to the pillar and he's like, yeah, maybe this one. dead. Wait, what? I died. How?
I was like last call, except a little bit weirder.
Yeah, and players need their handheld. As much as we hate to admit it, and as much as we hate to do it, you can't always be there to go, oh, it works like this, or oh, it works like this. A player has to be able to reasonably figure out how something can work, how to use it, or how to avoid it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The thing is, something like Epic 2 was made, suitably far into the development of Doom's community that, people these days when they load something up, it's very different to if you make a new game. Imagine if someone loads up Adventures of Square for the first time, they're going to be more perceptive to new things, obviously, because it's using completely different resources, it's its own game. But in today's PWAD environment, if you load something out, you're going to die first before you realize there's something you should have been paying attention to, usually, because you're not predisposed to be searching for those sort of hints. You might pick up on things on the side like, oh, this nukage isn't damaging, so perhaps on the next level the nukage will not be damaging, but you won't be stopping to count them. I had no idea the last call torches corresponded to it. You would think, of course, that makes sense. You would play level 30 and you would count the sequence of these aren't just colored torches, it's a pattern, you're supposed to be paying attention. It would be 10 years before I realized there was a correlation there. I would just throw myself into the death pits repeatedly until I got it correct. Maybe I'm just thick. That is one of the two options.
Well, but if you're using a Z-derived source port, there's also the auto map, which shows the teleport lines, so...
Yeah, that's kind of cheating. Yeah, but it's well, we're talking about, just for the audience, we're talking about last call, map 30 of TNT Evolution.
Right.
That map. But it's the I totally understand the argument of it's the if the environment is still the same, then people are still going to expect the same gameplay, even though in this day and age where they have people trying something new and stuff like that. But you know what I get? My pet peeve is when people edit the behavior of monsters and they don't change the appearance of the monster, even slightly. Just give them green eyes instead of whatever gold eyes it has. If you change up the behavior, because my brain is still operating in that space where nothing's changed about this. But then when people mod a monster to throw 3 fireballs at once, or something that isn't readily apparent, or it has a randomized attack pattern, but it still looks the same as it used to.
You mean
I get annoyed.
Strange BFG zombies?
Yeah, I get annoyed as fuck.
First time playthrough, I just killed that dude. I had no, because I think they're just as weak as a normal zombie. I had no idea that there are BFG zombies in the game. Wait, I didn't encounter any.
Yeah. With JPF, I've been sort of making that mistake of not changing the monster appearances, but I've also been dramatically changing their behavior and sound. So they're sort of moving fast and sliding around and making obnoxious hooting and hollering noises, and hopefully that clues people in that things aren't the same as they used to be.
I think my favorite is the Revenant.
Yeah. The sounds for the monsters, the sounds in the monsters for the monsters in JPF are pretty shitposty at times. And my favorite one is the Revenant. Its voice is a tape recorder, and it plays back, when it sees you, it plays back stock screaming sound effects. So it'll be you'll hear a click sound, then that dark forces falling noise, then a click again. But my favorite sound it makes is one of its idle noises. You hear the click and you just hear a female voice say, "Skeleton," then a click again.
Nice.
It's wonderful. Truly wonderful. And then from there, let's, sounds like a nice little way to branch into the stuff we've been working on lately. Kinsie, obviously, working on Juvenile Power Fantasy, and sharing a lot of developmental stuff with us. Anything else of interest you'd like to talk about?
Well, I released a new version, a new build yesterday as of recording. So that's been... I revamped the melee system to change it from just endless flailing to add a bit of a combo system. That makes it a lot better. And I dramatically improved performance. There was one really, really weird bug that really deserves mentioning.
What's that?
So Zdoom has a system in its player options where you can specify your gender, and this is only really used for the pronouns in the obituaries.
Mm-hmm.
And I added a system where the game sort of checks what gender you've specified and then gives you a different mugshot in the HUD. And this was spiraling out of control with the voodoo dolls because they didn't have a gender CVAR. So they were constantly checking every tick. And the way I was doing this was with inventory items so that S-bar info could read it. So every ticket was just basically constantly checking in its pants, and it was generating thinkers and driving performance down dramatically.
Damn.
The robots are not only here, they're very confused about themselves.
Aren't we all at some point?
And like, it was bad. It got to the point where like E2M8 of Ancient Aliens would become unplayable 3 minutes in.
Ooh.
It was that bad.
Well, that's not good.
Sorted it though.
Mm-hmm. I take it, Fonz and Matt, your projects don't have any gender-related AI issues, do they?
Nah, can't say that.
What?
Can't say that.
What was the hesitation? What has Square got to do?
No. I was like,
what gender is Square?
Well, what kind of
am I going to have a talk with
tone
Jimmy?
is this? What kind of accusative tone is this, Alfonso? Jesus. No. I mean,
look, you will have to talk with Jimmy because the barrel was just a barrel to begin with, but now Violet has been anthropomorphized.
Oh, everybody's talking about Boy in His Barrel, right? That mod that Jimmy's been working off and on.
Mm-hmm.
Oh boy, that thing's. All of a sudden, that was on a stream by was it Joel from Vinesauce, and then that just kind of spiraled out of control.
All you need to do for any project is add a female character, and people will be all over it. Kinsie, take notes.
But it's a barrel. It's a barrel with it. Okay.
Why are you questioning the internet? Don't question the internet, Alfonso. You can't question the internet.
I'm sorry. I'm gonna confirm to Juvenile myself.
So I guess what I'm working on is finishing up episode 2. Finishing up episode 2 of Square. That's the main goal for me and the rest of the Square crew. It hopefully this is like a 95% hopefully it'll be done by the end of the year, and we're because we kind of have a soft deadline.
Episode 2 or Square?
Episode 2, sorry. So like episode 2 of Square is going to be done. We have kind of a soft deadline that we're working towards, and then there's going to be a bit of a polish phase, and then episode 2 is going to be released, and then we get to slack off for a couple months.
I think I heard this from Jimmy last year.
So, well, I mean, like, what is it? The most of the things are occupying are the team's time is 1, real life shit. 2, Jimmy's kind of like mostly away at university, but he's finishing up this year. There's I don't know. Whenever it's a bad habit, especially I would think in the Doom community, that a lot of people take on like different sorts of projects because of a lot of cool stuff that people are making. And what happens is, even when there's a priority project or whatever, any kind of lull in the project makes people scatter for a little bit and then come back to it. And I'm guilty of it, but it's not the other stuff in Doom. It's mostly I'm working on like a tile engine, like a 3D tile engine that is hopefully going to be interesting one day. And I'm working on a text adventure engine with its own language and implementations in both Java and JavaScript. So like it's like I have some other irons in the fire, but we're hunkering down and finally finishing up Square now that we have more eyeballs still looking at things. A person who's been a tremendous help in this regard, especially with graphics and spriting and a lot of Captain J. Like Slax has been there for a lot of like concept stuff, and every once in a while we're gonna start having our artists do like promotional stuff on the Twitter thing when we have announcements. But like Captain J is like our main spriter. Slax is our like concept concept artist slash artistic cheerleader and emotional support, and Baratus is doing our cutscene art and stuff like that, because we're actually going to have like cutscenes between episodes, and there's stuff done, but like, oh man, like in terms of like spriting and like just sheer making a whole lot of stuff, Captain J has been super helpful in that regard.
Who's the one who's obsessed with putting eyebrows, big bushy eyebrows on Square?
That's Slax.
Right. Yeah. You just keep one eye on him. That's a little bit unusual.
Slax is cool. Slax is really, really cool.
But if you're at work, don't go to his Tumblr. If you're at work, don't go to his Tumblr.
That's a mistake you only make once.
Big, sexy eyebrows everywhere.
So
I'm just gonna say he's probably not shown a whole lot to the public, but you should see some of the pictures that Kara and Slax have been drawn of Square. I'm just gonna say he's got a pretty shapely buttocks. So
yeah, I've seen that. I've seen the it's not Rule 34 if it originates from the the crew in some way. I don't think.
The Platinum Games rule.
That's the what is it? That's the litmus test for if you've made it or if you've made something popular. Is if people start making Rule 34 of your work.
But there, you're just trying to ease people into a hey, we've got some already done here.
Yeah, to get the gears moving.
Mm-hmm.
Among other things.
The internet will make it. Oh, jeez. All right, so that's what I'm working on, a bunch of weird side projects, and the priority is Square, so please.
Have you not given any thought to, like, where Big Brick might go in the future, like what it might be tied to? Any of these smaller projects you could use the name Big Brick for example?
Well, I mean, like, we all have ideas and stuff, but like we all have to figure out if there's like a feasible idea in the future. I'm sure we'll take a break after Square because, it's a lot of work. And
of course, but I mean, like in the interim, there are probably small things that you could chuck at it.
I mean,
sort of just to assist the brand.
Keep
it afloat.
I feel like all of us are very busy in outside of Adventures of Square, and right. that's going to always kind of be like, okay, when's the time in which we can start thinking about something a little bit serious past Square? Because I'll be damned if we're using Z-Doom again for anything that we're going to be making in the future.
Huh.
Well,
it's getting like the more you use Z-Doom, the more I'm getting annoyed at its design thus far.
Well, to be fair, that's something that happens with every engine.
Right. Yeah, I'd imagine Graphzol calling you all losers and morons probably isn't helping.
No,
nice.
I'm not even gonna say it's that. It feels like at some point. Well, for the longest time, Randy was the chief guider of the design of Z-Doom, where she put a lot of it was emphasis on like expanding it around how Hexen expanded the Doom engine, because Hexen is a superset of what Doom could do, and it kind of kept in that, but then as features got added and more, the overall design started falling apart because it got less and less consistent, especially when you have a bunch of programmers that want to help with the project, there's no fault in wanting to help, but it starts diverging if you don't have an overarching director for that sort of thing. So with software, it becomes even more important to get all that stuff on track. It might be especially so because, I don't know, like with anything creative and that needs some kind of organization, it's hard to keep things in line. And I don't know, like Graf tries to put his foot down with like the nose, but which I do not fault him for at all. He's got to say no a lot more often to people's crazy features, because they want that one little thing that'll make their mod really shine and make their work really easy.
The word must feel very familiar on his lips at this point.
but yeah, it's I don't know. We're not going to be using Z-Doom, whatever we do.
Oh, sorry for pressing you on this matter, Matt. It's just that you have, you claim to be the messiah of indie dev, so I need to...
How dare you? Don't you dare put words in my mouth.
Oh, those are your words.
No, I did not say that. I'm just saying Square is a...
We don't need to put words in your mouth. You have been out talking all of us combined this episode. I'd just like to say to the audience before we began, Matt was going, I can't speak on any of this stuff. I don't know anything at all about this. And here he is just being a chat bucket.
No, I mean,
Beer to the rescue.
It's all tangential. It's all the concept behind the stuff you're talking about. It's not
Tower of Tangents.
That is
E2M8.
exactly the point of this. Do you really think any of us know anything about anything at all?
No, that's why it's a podcast. It's just a bunch of dudes talking about shit. That's every single podcast.
No one needs this. We don't need any of this.
I don't know about you guys, but I'm looking forward to Adventures of Fez.
What about you, Fonz? Since you're pulling out the rug from Matt forcibly, maybe you'd like to take the spotlight for a bit.
A little bit. I mean, I could pull a rug out from under Matt a little bit because I've been literally, well, not literally doing that, but I have been trying to procure the services of one of his most stalwart level designers in Caesar to get him to finish up something somewhere else, because he, like me, has caught that bug wherein we've all got ideas, we've all got things we need to contribute to, and we can only afford to spend so much time, yada, yada, yada. One of the things that he had on one of the back burners that I've now got around to helping him with is the Doom to the Way I Did Lost episodes. And if you remember, the first Doom the Way I Did had its own Lost episodes pack that numbered, I think it was 6 episodes, something well in excess of 45 levels or so. Doom to the Way I Did didn't have nearly that much off-run, but there's easily a megawads plus worth there, and we're busy tying that together. And it's been, as is the case with so many of these things, near completion for a good long while, and it just needs a little bit of a shove. And while he is focusing on Square, I'm helping him tie things up there. Hopefully also with the added benefit of him returning to finish off a certain other map for a certain other project that is also near completion, and that X thing of Doom World is currently sobbing into the serial over.
Finally! The release of Scythe X!
Finally.
Anyway, there seems to be... I mean, the Lost episodes seem to get a little bit of playtime, surprisingly. I guess because of its branding, tied to the super popular original. So hopefully people will have fun with the Lost episodes. The thing with the sort of adjudication when it came to selecting the maps for Doom to the Way it did is that there are obviously a lot of great maps in there that they're simply left out because of just authenticity purposes, and they actually play, I think, a lot better than some of the levels in Doom the Way it did. So it's not just an excess pack and the maps are worse. It's an honest to God decent level set in its own right. So look forward to that, assholes.
Mm-hmm. And then we just cut the podcast and it ends with you calling people assholes.
Look forward to that, assholes. And with that...
Yeah, I think that'll actually be a nice place to cut it, actually, because we are starting to run on... I have not kept track of time at all, but I know it was an hour since I started keeping track of time, so I can only imagine how long this has been going on with all of these wonderful little tangents. But it has been a pleasure having you along with us. It's always nice seeing things from the other side of the pond, and it's always nice to hear other takes on things.
Nice. Well, I mean, look, to me, VR seems to occupy, because there seems to be a big section of the audience from VR, and they seem to occupy their own space, but also they hang in a sort of limbo where they could be joining either community, and so they have interests. They have one foot in either side, and so I think getting an even number of... Have me on more often is what I'm trying to say.
You're shilling for yourself.
And maybe Matt, but he sort of hogs some of the limelight a little bit, and he talks a little bit too much. So
I'm a guest. This is the first time I've been on.
Fonz isn't.
I mean, Fonz has been on this way more than I have. I'm not trying to look. Stop me if I keep talking, please.
Why? It's so fascinating.
No, the less. What is it? That one line.
You have
from
a lovely, sensual voice.
Oh, thank you. Is that one line from 4 Rooms, that movie that nobody watched? It's during Quentin Tarantino's piece. The less,
Oh, that is the question I was about to ask.
the less declarative statements a person makes, the less foolish they seem in retrospect, I believe is the quote.
Well, you're going to be having a whole bunch of looking back on things now, then, I bet you.
Yep. Yep.
But
And we're done.
no, not yet. You're not in charge of this. You're not in charge of this show, you bitch.
And with that,
But yes, I would like to thank you very much, Fonz, for coming along. You too, Matt.
thank you for having me.
Oh, what am I,
I'd
chopped
like
liver?
And I would also, like to
Cat.
thank Kinsie before he interrupted me thanking him. So I guess I won't thank him after all.
Dick.
And
But yes.
Craig, who has not changed expression for the last 2 hours of discussion.
Yes, Craig, our interesting little robot recorder. I'm still not 100% on this studio that Fonz has set up for us, but it will be interesting to see how this goes. But with this officially concludes Season 2 of Intermission. This is the end of E2M8, and from that, well, we're going to be taking a little bit of a break. We're going to let some things seep in, see to our own projects, let the community fester for a little bit, have things happen, how things go, and who knows? Maybe we'll come back before the end of the year. Maybe we'll come back at the start of next year.
As if we don't take a break after every episode.
Yeah, that's true. We have a 2-week break between every episode.
Maybe you can be like WXR and just go straight into the next season without a break at all.
Yeah.
How
straight
about
in.
no? How
And
about
3
no?
views each episode.
I already spent enough time editing this as it is, though. I will be interesting now that Craig is recording, and I won't have to piece together the audio tracks one by one. I will be interested in seeing how this streamlines editing. It'll be interesting. But who knows? What'll the future hold? Well, we'll find out. Thank you all for listening. We'll see you all next season.
Aye.
It's been real.
Cut the arsehole.
No, I refuse.
That'd really hurt.